Welcome back to the Reload Bench. Recently, a friend of mine got a few new acquisitions, and I wanted to get him an accessory for one of them. You've heard of a housewarming gift? Well, this is a freedom-warming gift. What I ended up settling on was an M7 bayonet with M8 scabbard. And before I shipped this off to him, I wanted to take the opportunity to use this to talk about collecting milsurps. That's really the point of this video. It isn't really so much to show off a little bit more rare version of the M7 bayonet. It's really just to talk about collecting milsurps. Now, I'm not trying to convert anybody into a collector with this video. If buying a milsurp is simply just a way for you to get a cool piece of history or a wall hanger or an affordable firearm and surplus ammo to go to the range and plink with, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. People are interested in milsurps for different reasons. But if you're starting to notice variations in some of the milsurp items that you have, or when you compare something that you have to somebody else's, or you start looking on arms list or at gun shows or things like that, and you start noticing variations, you're going, why is this the way it is? That's what might start piquing your interest into collecting more so than just having it around as another gun or another bayonet, or what have you. And with collecting comes the search for original items, comes the search for accessories, comes the search for every version, every variation of a particular item. And it can get expensive and it can get time consuming. In the case of some of these items, there could be over 100 variations, and it could take you a lifetime to collect every single one. Or some of these things are so rare that there's only one in existence, or all the ones that exist are, you know, wealthy collectors have them, or museums, and the only thing, the closest you can get to out there is a reproduction. And that's another thing as well. When you start getting into collecting milsurps, once again, if this isn't just a range toy to you, it's very easy to be fooled by some reproductions or some counterfeits out there, and somebody might be charging you a lot of money for this rare item that really isn't rare. So there's a lot that comes with milsurps if you want to go down the collector's rabbit hole with it like I have. And I find studying milsurps fascinating. There's a lot. I mean, I could turn this into a 30-minute video just explaining all the different reasons why some of these things exist for us to buy and collect today. That I could explain some of the reasons why some things that were going to get canceled got a second chance at life, or how the politics of the time might have influenced why a certain military force went with this or went with that, or why there's similarities or differences between what militaries had at a particular time. Or, I mean, it goes on, and there's a lot of good resources out there. You know, you can watch YouTube videos. Those aren't too bad. And you can check out websites. Some of the websites have got some really good reference information. They've got good photos. They cite their sources, that sort of thing. Then there's other websites like forums that I tend to shy away from because there's a lot more opinion on forums, and you can get more questions and answers with forums. That's just been my experience. Books have been the best resource that I've had over the years for studying milsurps. But books can get expensive, really expensive, especially if they're out of print. But it is kind of nice to have that library to go with your milsurp item. That almost becomes an accessory. So, in this video, before I ship this off to my friend, I wanted to explain what the difference between this and this is, to try to give you an idea of what to look for if you're starting to get into studying the historical aspects of milsurp items, or you're starting to get into collecting. So let's get right to it. So now that we've got the long intro out of the way, what are we looking at here? So on the right, I have a Colt M7 bayonet with M8 scabbard, and this is new old stock. On the left, and this is what I'm sending off to my friend. I think it'll make a nice accessory for his Colt AR-15, this is a little bit more of a rare bayonet these days. They've been around for a long time, and I've seen more of these in the past, but over time I'm seeing less and less of these Colt bayonets. On the left here we have one of my old M7 bayonets, and this is made by Bauer Ordnance Company. Now, I'll start off with just leaving the bayonets in the scabbard and just kind of doing a walk around here. So you can see the M8 scabbard on my bayonet is kind of smooth in texture. It's fiberglass and it's olive green. There's a little bit of green corrosion here on this rivet. The snap, the brass snap here is, it's got most of the black paint worn off of it, but it's still serviceable. It still works. Now, if you look at this Colt bayonet, the scabbard is a little bit more rough texture than on the Bauer, and it's just a little bit longer. Also, the end of it here, it does have a lanyard loop hole through here, but it doesn't have, on the Bauer, there's a metal cap on the end. It's shorter and it has a metal cap, whereas the Colt, it's just longer and it's all fiberglass. So this rougher texture is not abrasive on the skin, but you can tell it's definitely made a little bit differently. But both of these are mil spec. Both of these are M8A1 scabbards. This scabbard is a little bit lighter green. It's not as dingy. You can see there's no corrosion here on the rivets. There is some corrosion on the snap, but on this snap, you might be able to see the light's not exactly the best here. It's still got most of the black paint on it, and that's because this is new old stock. I think this has been in storage based on its condition. So with my old bayonet here, I'm going to take it out. You can see that the blade is a little bit nicked up. The parkerizing is kind of worn off of it some, but it is still serviceable. It's still in good shape. It's got the attachment here for the bayonet lug, and the spring-loaded lock on that still works. This is still a serviceable bayonet. If we take out the Colt, just take loose the snap here, pull it out, you can see it took more effort to take that out. It's a lot tighter. And if you look at the finish here, the parkerizing is original. This is sharp. This is not nicked or pitted or scratched. This is sharp. This bayonet has never been used before. The grips here on the Colt bayonet are black and shiny, and the spring for the bayonet lug attachment is serviceable as well. Whereas on my Bauer Ordnance Company bayonet here, the grips are serviceable. They're not cracked or damaged, but they are kind of dulled. Now I'm going to take the camera off the tripod to try to get up close to show you some of the markings. And this is something that you would look for as a collector. You would look for different markings. Sometimes these markings can be faked, so you want to know what you're looking for before you make your purchase. So let me see if I can get this up close and show you. Okay, camera's off the tripod. It's probably going to be a little shaky, and I might cast a shadow here. But let's see if I can get up close enough. Okay, how about if I turn this right side up? So you can see stamped right here, BOC, Bauer Ordnance Company. And then you can see on the other side stamped in here, USM7. And those are the appropriate markings, and that's how I was able to figure out who the manufacturer was on this. Now on the Colt bayonet, if you look up close here, you can see Colt's Hartford, Connecticut, USA. And you can see the Colt Lion logo there with the trademark. And that's stamped right there on the blade. Now, is there a USM7 marked on here? You can see it, but because the parkerizing isn't worn out, it's a little bit difficult to see. But it also says USM7, but there's no need to stamp Colt on the other side when they've got it on the blade. In addition to making bayonets themselves, Colt had two other contractors make bayonets for them. Imperial Knife Company made 30,000 bayonets. They also had an overseas company, Carl Eichhorn, make some of these bayonets, and they are marked with the Colt logo, but they also say made in West Germany. So it's good to have information like that as a collector if you're looking for one bayonet in particular. And sometimes you kind of run into dead ends when you're doing research on this sort of thing. I know the video's been really long and I kind of droned on as usual, but I was trying to give you an idea of different things that you might expect to see if you're collecting milsurps. These bayonets are just a representation of several different military surplus items. It's not just bayonets and firearms. You could try to accessorize and get everything that the soldier, sailor, marine, or airman would have had at that particular era to go along with the firearm. Cartridge belts, you name it. I mean, the list goes on and on. In addition to that sort of thing, there are more than just manufacturer's markings on some of these items. Sometimes you'll have proof marks. Sometimes you'll have inspector's marks. Sometimes the item will go into the arsenal for storage, and when it comes out, it gets inspected and it gets an inspector's mark. So you may have 3 or 4 inspector's marks on this bayonet, firearm, or what have you, because it's gone in and out of the warehouse, more or less. Sometimes they need a new item, and they've got a lot of surplus old items, and they'll take an old item like a bayonet and cut it down and make a few changes to it and issue it as a new item. And you could buy that bayonet for less money, even though it's in better condition because it's been reworked, than, say, the original version that there's less and less of now. It's more rare. And it's just understanding the history that helps you appreciate that when you're looking at different milsurp items and you're going, why does this cost more than that? Or why is this more rare than that? Both of these were made by 3 of the initial contractors for M7 bayonets. But these Colt bayonets have become less and less common over the years. In closing, hopefully you guys have learned a little bit more about my interests, about why I find military history and military surplus so fascinating, why it's a hobby of mine, why collecting it is a hobby of mine. And hopefully I've given somebody some information if they're looking to get into it themselves. And I can't remember if I said it at the beginning of the video or not, but hopefully my friend finds this Colt M7 bayonet as interesting as I find it. I've actually always wanted to get one and never did, and I'm glad that I've had this opportunity to handle one and to preserve it on video, and maybe along the way spark some other people's interest or answer some questions, or just share with the audience a little bit more about me and my interests. Thanks for watching.